Very warm welcome to all the distinguished participants. On behalf of BCIC, we welcome you all for this exclusive session on enhancing business performance with good corporate governance practices. Thank you, Mr. Deeraj Nair, for accepting our invitation to address at this session. Um, this session is organized under the aegis of ESG Expert Committee of the Chamber, led by Mr. Vishwas, who is the MD of Vishwas Construction Industries, and co-chaired by Mr. Rajesh Jha, Country Environment and Sustainability Manager, ABB India Limited. Welcome, Mr. Rajesh Jha. Thanks for facilitating this session. I'd like to briefly introduce Mr. Deeraj Nair. Mr. Deeraj Nair is a qualified company secretary and holds a Bachelor of Commerce and Law from Mumbai University. He has more than a decade of rich experience across secretarial, legal, corporate governance, and compliance functions across manufacturing, transport, IT services, and energy industries. He is currently associated with ABB India Limited as Senior Legal Counsel and takes care of the corporate governance, secretarial, compliance, and legal matters. In the past, he has been associated with large organizations like ExxonMobil, Mahindra and Mahindra, Genesis International Corporation, and Western Railways. Thank you once again, Mr. Nair. And the Chamber acknowledges the support of our member organizations, Messrs. BUHLER, Continental, FUNDERMAX, IAMPL, MTR, SDMIMD, SONA Group, TVS Motor, VISHWAS Group, and WIPRO for their support by way of sponsoring all the events organized during the year. Thank you once again for all the participants. And now I would like to invite Mr. Rajesh Jha to set the context. Over to you, Mr. Rajesh. Thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Rupa, and thank you, in fact, entire participant and our speaker, distinguished speaker today, Mr. Deeraj Nair, for joining this particular webinar on enhancing the business performance with good corporate governance practices. So I think we have been, in fact, our BCIC and the ESG team of this particular, organization have been trying, you know, like to bring awareness on various aspects of ESG. In fact, from many years, and of course, in recent, years, we have been quite active in terms of conducting various programs on environment, social, and governance. And in the past, in fact, many of our participants, in fact, would have attended training with respect to climate change. We also had awareness session on the BRSR, the basic ESG, the social aspect. And with that, in fact, we are covering various important, you can say, the topics which are quite relevant to our industry, our organizations, various organizations, in fact. And among all, in fact, today, the base, the kind of governance which holds the entire activity together, it takes the entire activity to the next level. We took that particular topic for our, today's session so that we can make you all understand how some of the best practices are there in the industry as well as some of the organizations and how it is helping them to achieve the sustainability in true sense. So with that background, now I request Mr. Deeraj Nair to take it forward and thank you all. Yep. So over to you, Mr. Deeraj Nair. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rupa, for that brief introduction. And thank you, Rajesh, for setting up the context for today's discussion. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is, in fact, my pleasure to speak to all of you on this important session, which would be focused on enhancing business performance with good corporate governance practice. In fact, we would be delving into a topic which is at the heart of most of the successful and sustainable organization in today's dynamic and ever-evolving business landscape. So corporate governance, as you all know, is the foundation upon which businesses are built. Transparency is built and accountability of each business enterprises is built. It in fact sets the tone for ethical behavior. It fosters long-term value creation. It establishes a framework for decision making that encompasses the interests of the stakeholders at large. So in this session, we would explore certain dimensions of corporate governance and its undeniable impact on enhancing the business performance. We would be delving on some key principles which underpin the effective governance strategies. We would be speaking about the board composition, independence of the board, the diversity, role of leadership, transparency, accountability, and risk management, which would form the bedrock for corporate governance. We will try to end this presentation by talking about how good governance practices can contribute to a company's financial stability, enhance its brand value, reputation, and also attract investment. So corporate governance and governance practices, if you see, it is basically a mindset, it is a culture, and it is a commitment from all the persons who are working for that company, all the stakeholders involved, to uphold the highest standards of integrity and responsibility. So when Rajesh asked me to do this session 2 days back, I thought, I mean, what should I talk? Corporate governance is something that is at the back of the mind of everybody, every organization as on today. So there is nothing which I can add to it. But then I thought, let me put some slides together and talk you through my experience that I have in the last 10 years, and also some practices that the companies have been doing to ensure that the governance is at its best. And the if we have a good process or a good framework, then that will take care of the organization during testing times as well. So what I will do is I would encourage each of you to participate, share your thoughts. I mean, you all are experienced in your own field, and you would have dealt with corporate governance in different industries, different sectors. So if in case you want to share your thoughts or you want to engage in a fruitful discussion, I'm happy to do that. Let's take this opportunity to learn from each other and forge a meaningful connection that will enable us to strengthen the governance practices and ultimately drive business performance, which is the ultimate goal of any organization today. So with that, would anybody of you like to have a first pass on what do you mean by corporate governance? Just share your thoughts as to what you mean by corporate governance, and then we'll take it forward from there. Any of you?
Participants can put it in the chat box.
I think I can understand this is a post-lunch session. So, okay, then we can move on. So what I have tried to do is I've tried to give you a snapshot of the definition that has been given by my alma mater, which is the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. So what it says is that corporate governance is the application of best management practices, compliance of law, both in true letter and spirit, and adherence to ethical standards for effective management, distribution of wealth, and discharge of social responsibility for sustainable development of stakeholders. This definition is a wide definition which has tried to capture everything that is required for an organization to be successful in long term. So corporate governance is nothing but it's a system of rules, practices, and process by which a company can be run and managed. The preliminary objective is to ensure that the company is managed in a way that maximizes shareholder value. Because I mean, at the end of the day, the main goal is to create value for the shareholders who have invested in your company. But while doing so, you have to take into other account all the stakeholders involved. All the stakeholders means the country in which you are operating, the employees who are working in your company, the suppliers, distributors, the contractors, the environment in which you are operating, etc. So we need to take care of all the stakeholders while upholding standards of integrity and ethical standards. Moving on. So what is the history? What was the push for good governance? So if you see, there were various illustrious business enterprises which witnessed spectacular growth during the boom time, but then they were later failure. It was either because of mismanagement or because of lack of effective internal controls or lack or problems in financial reporting. It can be
Dheeraj,
because
one point there. Sorry
yeah.
to interrupt you. Are you presenting anything?
Yes, Rajesh.
No, we are not able to see the screen. I don't know. Is
Oh,
it for
I'm so
everyone?
sorry. I'm so sorry. Can
Yeah,
you see?
great.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Now we can see. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
illustrious business enterprises which witnessed spectacular growth in boom time became failure because of mismanagement. It was lack of effective internal controls and financial reporting, or it was because of poor governance standards. Then there have been multiple scams that have occurred, not only here in India, but across the globe. So what these scams have taught us is that there has to be internal controls, there has to be governance practices which will ensure that such scams does not happen in the future. We need to put an end to such scam. Then there was an investor push. So these investors who are investing in your company wanted the company to be operated in certain fashion. There has to be governance practices. There has to be a process. There has to be a system in place, etc. So investors also wanted to invest only in those company which had good governance structure. So before investing, any investor would like to do a due diligence of the company to see to it that the company is being managed properly, the board meetings are run, the reporting lines are proper, there is proper financial reporting, the accounts and financial statements present a true and fair view of the operations of the company, etc. Then globalization. So if you see, many multinational companies came into India, started their operations. So what they did when they came into India, they also wanted to set up the same systems and processes that they had in other foreign countries, so that they can run the business in a similar fashion in which they have been running in other countries where they have been a success. So they wanted to replicate it, and because of that also many governance practices, many new government governance practices came into India, and we also the Indian companies also started adopting those governance practices. And now we have reached a stage where we have many companies which are like top in governance, not only in letter but in spirit. They have been doing much beyond what is expected from them, much beyond what is there in the law. Then there has been many corporate governance development in India. If you see, it started somewhere in 1998, where Confederation of Indian Industries came out with a desirable corporate governance code. Then there was a Kumar Mangalam Birla committee, which was constituted in
Dheeraj, you are in
Mr.
mute
Nair,
actually.
you're on mute.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. So when it comes to CG corporate governance developments in India, it has been a step-by-step process. If you see, it started way back in 1998 when Confederation of Indian Industry came out with a desirable corporate governance code. Then we had this Kumar Mangalam Birla Committee in 2000, which came out with various recommendations pertaining to good governance practices. Then there was a task force that was constituted on corporate excellence in 2000. They came out with recommendation. Then there was Naresh Chandra Committee in 2002. Then came Narayan Murthy Committee, which was, I think, in 2003. Then JJ Irani Committee. Then corporate governance voluntary guidelines came in. Then there was some guidelines that were issued by Department of Public Enterprises for central public sector undertakings. Then there was Adi Godrej committee. All these committees, they have been constituted because something wrong happened in the business world. Some scam happened, some fraud happened, and the regulators wanted to have a system in place to ensure that the companies operate in a proper manner, and such frauds which uh, take the stakeholder wealth away should be prevented. People should have the confidence in investing in capital markets, and the intent of these committees were to come out with the recommendations which can be adopted across all companies, and the governance practices for the companies in India can be uplifted. uh, I would say the Companies Act 2013, which came in, was a game changer when it comes to uh, coming out with best governance practices. Of course, for listed company, there was clause 49 of listing agreement, which talked about corporate governance practices to be adopted by a listed company. But what Companies Act 2013 did was that it was applicable to all the companies. It was applicable to unlisted public companies. It was even applicable to private companies. Not all the sections would be applicable to a private company, but many of the sections were made applicable. And seeing the uh, importance of having these best practices, many companies have started voluntary adopting, though it may not be applicable to my company, but let me adopt it because this is a good governance practice and it can contribute to the betterment of my organization. So if you see Companies Act 2013, I would say a game changer because there were a lot of concepts that got introduced in Companies Act 2013. The concept of independent directors came into play. Independent directors was there, but then Companies Act made it mandatory for unlisted public companies also. Say, for example, a company having a paid up capital of more than 10 crores, if it's a public company, needs to have mandatorily have independent directors. So what this independent directors does is, if there are no external directors, you tend to be working in a similar fashion. You won't get an external perspective as to what is happening across the world. These independent directors, when they come into your board, they will bring in an external perspective, they will bring in their external experience, and that will add value to the business as a whole and will also help you in setting up processes that other companies may be following, or that this independent directors want this company to follow, because he being in a fiduciary position should have the confidence to be on the board of director, and that would definitely add to transparency. There would be better financial reporting. The board meeting processes can be improved upon. If in case an external person wants to see your books of accounts, you would prepare it in a fashion that is in compliance with the law, that is in compliance with everything. There won't be any gaps. So that was the whole concept of introducing the practice of having independent directors to unlisted public companies also. I have seen many private limited companies also having people from external organizations as director on the board, because these guys add value. Say, for example, if there is a company and the company feels that there has to be a person who has some IT related expertise on my board, you can bring in somebody from external uh, world and add him to the board, which will definitely add value to the board. Then there was a concept of having women director on certain boards. If in case the company falls in certain thresholds, they need to mandatorily have a woman director on the board. So, I mean, many would have thought, I mean, what is the reason of having a woman director on board? So, if you see a woman director coming into the board, brings in a different perspective. She can be role model for other women. There is a diversity in the board. There is gender equality, and women as such have that market relevance because they have the way they are wired, they have market relevance, and it also helps the entire world in overcoming bias, and having such diversity on the board would definitely help in enhanced business decision making. Then key managerial personnel concept was introduced, wherein a company which has a paid up capital of more than 10 crores needs to mandatorily have a managing director, a chief financial officer, and a company secretary. So the managing director will ensure that the substantial powers of management are utilized in a proper manner. CFO will ensure that the financial statements would give a true and fair view, since they are signing the financials and they're responsible for maintenance of financials in a proper manner. Company secretary will see to it that the compliance of all applicable laws are taken care of. If you see Companies Act 2013, in fact, it codified the duties of a director. It came out with duties of that of a company secretary. It put penal provisions on officers on default. So these changes, these regulations have pushed the companies to adopt better governance practices so that they are not falling in the wrong part of law. Then rotation of auditor concept was introduced, which is again a good sign, because what happens if the
Mr.
same
Nair?
audit? Yeah.
Sorry to disturb.
Yeah.
Is it the same slide or because the slide here denotes
It's the
push for
same
good
slide.
governance?
It's the same slide. I'm just building upon the history
Okay then.
and the regulatory changes that have really pushed the change in corporate governance.
Okay, thank you.
So rotational auditors concept, again, an important concept, because what happens is if the same auditors have been auditing your books for say past 50 years, they won't be able to identify the gaps that there are, that are there in your books. If in case a new fresh eye comes in, then they would be able to identify those gaps that are there. Also, they would bring in processes that can improve the way the financial reporting is being done. Then concept of internal audit was introduced, which they made it mandatory for many companies to have internal audit mandatory. So internal audit, what they do is they will ensure that whatever policies, procedures are in place are complied with or not, if in case there are any gaps that gets highlighted. And then this gap filling exercise can be done by the board. So these are some of the regulatory changes that pushed when it comes to adoption of better governance practices. And many companies, because they wanted to be seen as a good, better governed company, started adopting these practices, though it was not mandatorily applicable to them. And that has overall resulted in India being looked in as a favorite investment destination, because people found the confidence in Indian companies and they started investing. They had the confidence that the funding that they would be doing would be protected because of these regulatory guidelines and the way corporate governance practices are adopted in the company. Moving on, why good governance? So I've tried to put down the points that are essential or requirement for a good, what good governance can lead to. So good governance can lead to creation of a culture of transparency, accountability, and disclosure. It would ensure that the company acts in a way which is like morally and ethically proper. It leads to improved corporate performance, of course, with assurance as to quality decision making, board independence. Then good governance would ensure that there is board effectiveness and strategic decision making. It develops trust in investors and build confidence in investors. It can lead to a long-term sustainability when it comes to organization building. And it would mean that there is a effective risk management process in place. It is very important that the companies put in forth a proper risk management. Many companies, what I have seen is that they have not really concentrated on risk management. So risk management is extremely important these days. You would have seen during COVID that many companies found it difficult to sustain when there was a lockdown, when there were no sales happening, when employees were not allowed to come into offices. So the companies which had this effective risk management or business continuity plans in place before would well adopt to the changing situation that happened during COVID. So COVID was an unprecedented situation. Nobody would have thought that there would come a situation where there would be 15 days lockdown or 20 days lockdown when the entire country would be in a standstill. Nobody would have thought. But then those companies which had business continuity plans taking into account uh, any scenario where the offices cannot function because of some reason, what is the plan B they have? They could well adopt to it and they could come up to the speed in a better manner than those companies which wouldn't have dealt with over this topic or did not have any business continuity plans at that point. Any questions so far on any of the topic that we have discussed so far? Or anybody, if you want to share any thoughts about corporate governance or any of the topic that we have dealt with so far? If not, then we can move ahead. These are some of the prerequisites for uh, for good governance. So one, first and foremost, good governance should come right from the top. So it can come only from the top if we have a strong and independent board up there at the top. So board of the directors of the company needs to take into account as to what could be the optimum size of the board, what could be the educational qualifications that each board member should have, what is the value add that each board member should bring in. All those things that are very important, because it is a top down approach. Governance should come right from the top and then it should reach the bottom. It can't be that it will start from the bottom and go to the top. It has to be from the top management, and it has to be in such a fashion that nothing, if in case there is any violation of any of the governance practices, or if there is violation of any of the policies that is there in the company, that should be seen strictly and punishment should be given, so that there is a this culture of governance can be built upon. Building a culture of governance is extremely important. Just having a policy or just having a code of conduct would not do any benefit to you unless you act upon it, and each employee, each stakeholder, it is instilled in the mind that this is what is expected from you. This they will do it when somebody is looking into it or somebody is not looking into it. They should ensure that the policies or the values that the company has is being upheld in every situation that they are in. Then the legislation that have been coming in, I've already talked about how Companies Act 2013 has been a game changer. These new concepts getting introduced, and based on that, how business or how the companies in India evolved. Say, corporate social responsibility was also a new concept that came in from Companies Act 2013. If in case you see, when it came in, it was that you comply. If you don't comply, you just explain as to why you didn't comply. But what was happening was that people were not complying with that legislation. They were not spending that 2% of profits of their average profit of last 3 financial years towards corporate social responsibility. They were giving explanations which were not really meaning. And that's why now, if you see, the legislations have changed and now it has become mandatory, and they have gone ahead and they have put onus on the chief financial officer of the company to ensure that whatever contribution goes out for CSR also needs to be spent in that particular year. Everything has to be taken care. So micromanagement has been put into place. It was because people didn't take care of that compliance. Had all the companies adopted that corporate social responsibility in a proper manner and brought out a change to the social fabric of the country without going into uh, not spending that CSR money, these regulations wouldn't have come in. So regulatory changes are, I would say, one of the prerequisite for good governance. Then board should have appropriate skill sets to manage, to ensure, to manage the risk, to ensure that there is a process in place, the compliances are done in a proper manner, etc. Again, elaborate process of board selection. It talks about how you can bring in the right fit for the right role into the board or into the senior management of company. Those can drive those changes accordingly. Then induction and training of the board. It is extremely important. Many companies don't take care of this part. Whenever a new member gets added to the company, it's important that we give them a proper induction so that they understand the culture of the company and they try to act in a way the company operates. If in case a person who doesn't understand the culture of the company comes in and tries to bring some changes, it can be a disaster. So he or she who is coming into the company should know how the culture of the company is, how the company functions, and basis that he or she can suggest the ways of improvement and come out with his or her own strategy. And training of board is also extremely important. Times are changing, things are changing. It's a ever evolving business landscape. So appropriate training has to be provided to the board members so that they're right on top of it, and these governance requirements that are coming in are being complied with the company both in letter and in spirit. Proper conduct of board meeting, again, extremely important. So there has to be a proper process in place. There are certain mandatory items that have to be placed before the board in accordance with the Companies Act as well as the listing agreement. And there has to be certain processes when it comes to conduct of board meeting. These are the mandatory information that needs to be placed before the board. These are the reportings that needs to be done to the board. These are the areas that will come up to the board for their approval. So if in case you have a proper process and proper conduct of board meeting, it would ensure that the top management is having visibility of the entire operations of the company, and that in a way would drive good governance practices in any company. Of course, there has to be a transparency in board processes and reporting. So it should not be that it will be a tick the box exercise. These are the items that to be placed before the board. I'll place the same thing at every board meeting, just changing the date of the board meeting or the quarter for the board meeting. It should not be that. Whatever data is being placed before the board should be proper. It has to be correct. It has to give a true and fair view of the operations of the company, and ensure that the board is well aware of whatever is happening in the company. And if in case there is any help required from the top management, it can be brought in. Next is adherence to code of conduct. So I'm sure many of the companies that you would be working would be having a code of conduct. So having a code of conduct is extremely important. It's not that you should have a code of conduct. It should also be that the code of conduct should be adhered to in toto. It should not be that we have policies for everything, but then nobody is taking care of it. So this code of conduct has to be instilled in the minds of everybody who is there in the company, to ensure that this code of conduct is being adhered to in both letter and spirit. And if in case there is a code of conduct violation, that has to be viewed seriously. It has to be treated as a misconduct, and action should be taken against, so that any wrong happenings in the company can be rectified then and there. If in case we tend to let go things, it will repeat, and it will there will be a situation where it would be very difficult for a company to survive. Then strategy setting is very important. Uh, Company should be aware of their business and societal obligations and ensure that the obligations that the company carries are carried out in a proper and correct manner. The financial and operational reporting should be in a manner that it does not only talk about the quantity, but it is quality reporting as well. So if in case there is any reporting that needs to be done, it has to have backup of the information that is required, how that data has been derived. There has to be sources to it. There has to be a proper channel through which that data has been derived. So these are some of the prerequisites of good governance. So if in case you have all these things in place, or if you contribute, or if you work towards achieving those things, it would automatically mean that your company would become a better governed company. Then there is constitution of board committees. So if you see, Companies Act 2013 made it mandatory various committees to be constituted by each company, like corporate social responsibility committee is there, which is given the responsibility of monitoring the corporate social responsibilities and spend, identifying the projects that the company wants to contribute, seeing that the funds that are contributed towards CSR is going in the right direction. Then there is audit committee, which is entrusted with the responsibility of taking care of financial statements, taking care of internal reporting, taking care of internal controls, taking care of uh, rotation of auditors, internal audit, determining the scope of internal audit, etc. So these committees, I mean, the board cannot be involved in all the day-to-day functioning of the company. So what these committees do is that these committees, if we determine a scope for these committees will take care of that particular aspect. And if in case there is anything that needs to be reported to the board, they will go and report to the board. By doing that, we are ensuring that that particular facet is being taken care by that committee, and a committee oversight would definitely mean that things are proper, the reporting is being done in a proper manner. These committee members should ask the right question so that they can push the management to bring in more. Then there is nomination and remuneration committee, which will determine the executive compensation, which will determine the compensation for the employees of the company. They will see to it that there is a succession planning in place. They will see to it that right member is added to the board. Then board performance monitoring, again, performance evaluation of board was one of the concept that got introduced in both listing agreement and Companies Act 2013. What this board evaluation does is that they will evaluate, because board of directors is the top management of the company. There is nobody above it. So it's very necessary, very important that they also evaluate themselves. And if in case say one of the director is not functioning or not a proper fit to the company, efforts can be made to improve the functioning of that director, or a replacement can be sought for that director also. So evaluation of the board is also extremely important. It will also tell you as to what are the things that this board is doing right and what are the things where the board is lacking or board is not up to the mark. Then risk management robustness. It's very important that the company has a better risk management policy in place, and also they identify the measure, or they document what are the threat, what are the risks that could impact on the achievement of the business objectives of the company. How good the company is at identifying opportunities to eliminate this expensive risk treatments. Do we have any contingency plans or business continuity plans in place to deal with a potentially high risk or a low probability situation? There can be a instance like COVID, or there can be an instance where your systems are affected because of a cyber incident, or a virus has got into the system, which has made all the systems in the company not in a working manner. So what are the plan B that you have? How can you prevent uh, a virus to go into some other systems, or go into some servers, or or affect your customers or distributors? So everything has to be documented. These are the risks. This would be the mitigation measures that would be there in place. And we need to identify owners also who would take care of that risk, so that this risk mitigation exercise is in place, and if in case something goes wrong, we have a ready-made process in place that will take care of the damage or the loss that can be affected because of that risk. Last but not the least, there has to be obsession with compliance, because I mean, the way MCA, the regulators have been, the cost of compliance would be huge. It can lead to imprisonment, it can lead to heavy penalties, it can lead to stoppage of your operations, it can affect your license to operate. So compliance should be at the forefront. You need to ensure that all the compliances that are applicable to the company are taken care. There is somebody who can take care of that compliance. In fact, I would say there has to be an obsession to compliance. The compliance function, it's not a cost function. It is a function that actually contributes to the top line of the company, because to know the price of a non-compliance, you should actually do a non-compliance and see. Then you will realize how these penalties can affect your company. It can affect your reputation, it can lessen your brand value, etc. So compliance should be taken seriously, and the board of directors should have clear visibility of how the compliance function or how the compliances are being operated in a company. There is a responsibility under Companies Act on all the directors to ensure that there is a system in place to ensure compliance with all applicable laws, but it should not be a tick the box exercise where everybody is saying that I have compliant, and they have not actually looked into it whether they are complying with that or not. They just ticked the box and signed it and gave it to the board, and the board is relying on that declaration. It should not be like that. The internal audit function or the external auditors should see that whatever processes are there are working properly or not. Any questions so far? Okay. So if in case I want to put it in a pictorial fashion, what corporate governance would mean, it would start from board of directors of the company, then comes the legal and regulatory framework. So legal and regulatory framework, it is very essential. It's not a very costly exercise to come out with a legal and regulatory framework. So what anybody in the compliance function should do is that they should actually identify the laws that are applicable to the company. Say, for example, I am into fintech sector. So I should write down the laws that are applicable, that would be applicable to a fintech company. Then you can see whether it is applicable to me or not. If it is not applicable, okay, well and good, not applicable. If in case it is applicable, what are the action points that needs to be done? So there are 10 action items to be done. So I will list down that 10 action items. Then I need to identify owners for each of the compliance area. So, okay, this 4 will be done by Deeraj, this 4 will be done by Rajesh. So, and he should be made responsible, and his supervisor should have, a supervisor or the top management should have visibility whether he or she is not, she is doing that work or not. It's not a very costly exercise. If in case you want to list down the applicable laws, you can just go and check the annual report of a listed company who would be in the same sector. Say, for example, I am in IT sector. What I can do is I can download the annual report of one of the IT companies, famous IT companies from their website, go through their secretarial compliances report to see what are the laws that are applicable to them. So these are the laws that are applicable to an IT company. I am also an IT company. So these may be the rules, laws that are applicable. So I can list down, I can come out with checklist for each of the laws and ensure that there is somebody in the organization who is taking care of that particular requirement. So a regulatory compliance framework can be built, and it can be either on online basis or it can be in Excel file wherein everybody is ensuring every monthly basis or every quarterly basis that these compliances are being done. If it is done, the proof of that compliance is also available, and this gets reported to the board. When it comes to the board, ensure that you are transparent when it comes to reporting. If you have missed on one of the compliance, just make a mention of that in the board report so that the board is also aware that this compliance was missed, and if in case there is any action to be taken, that can be taken then and there. That is what I mean by organizational hierarchy. Also, there has to be persons in the organization who is responsible for each of the compliance, and there should be a monitoring mechanism as well. Then there has to be internal controls in place to ensure that uh, if in case somebody is doing the work, somebody is also checking that work so that the checker concept works. So if in case one of them doesn't do their work, the other can highlight it. If both of them don't do the work, then it can be an issue. But if in case there is a reporting above that, then it will somehow come into the picture, and we would be able to put an end to the non-compliance that are happening. It should be transparent and there has to be accountability, and basis this, policies and procedures can be developed upon. So when I was mentioning about code of conduct, you have various policies under the code of conduct. So these policies are nothing but these policies are developed because of some act, some rule that is there in place. If you see a typical code of conduct, it would have focus areas like conflict of interest. It would have areas about anti-corruption, antitrust. So you develop policies around each of these focus areas and ensure that the compliance is being managed in a proper manner. So it should not be that it's a tick the box exercise. It should be that it has to be adhered to both in letter as well as in spirit. Moving on, this is one of the checklists that I've prepared, which every company can keep it handy. They can now, I mean, this does not have all those areas that a listed company would have, but in case it tries to capture most of the things that are essential for good governance practices. So first is board and committees, whether the board is doing their job properly, whether the board processes are being done in a proper manner, whether every material that needs to be placed before that board is being placed or not, whether the companies committees that have been constituted is working as per the scope, are they making proper recommendations to the board or not. Then code of conduct and ethics. Code of conduct and ethics, very important. Code of conduct can have various focus areas. Some of the focus areas that I think about normally comes in a code of conduct are conflict of interest, the anti-corruption policy, fair employment, diversity and inclusion policy. If in case it's a multinational company, there would be global trade, then health, safety, environment and security, human rights policy. What do you do when it comes to anti-bribery and anti-corruption? What is to be done when it comes to information and technology security, IP, intellectual property rights and confidential information, how you deal with privacy, personal data, how you as a company operate when it comes to working with governments, when you're working with suppliers. These are the policies that can be drafted and put in place. Just ensure that if you have drafted a policy, it is also adhered to properly. So that needs, you can do that by training your stakeholders, by training your suppliers. And once the training is being given on a regular basis, that becomes a culture that, and you would be able to drive that culture across. Even if the people changes, that culture will take care of the culture, or the process will take care, and the company will perform in a way in which it is expected, upholding the best governance practices. Risk management and internal controls, I have already spoken about it. Then there has to be stakeholder engagement. If in case a stakeholder is not happy, there has to be reporting mechanisms through which they can bring forth what they feel is not doing that not being acted properly. There has to be investigation to see to it that the complaints that the stakeholders are raised are being investigated, and if in case there is any action that needs to be taken, any feedback that needs to be given, is being done in a proper manner. Transparency and disclosure, again, very important. Whatever you do you should do it in a transparent and fair manner. We have reached a stage where it is entirely disclosure based regime. Everything the government is asking for disclosures to be sent to the government. So you have to ensure that whatever disclosures we are giving uh, depicts a true picture of the operations of the company. It can't be that you will be giving the disclosure saying everything is being complied while nothing is being complied. So you have to fill that gap to see that whatever disclosure you are giving or whatever you have mentioned in the disclosures is actually happening in your company. There has to be succession and succession planning, because if in case somebody goes off at some particular point of time, there has to be processes, or there has to be somebody who can take over that responsibility and ensure that there is no gap in the operation of the company. Last but not the least, the corporate social responsibility and sustainability. So since this is a ESG subgroup, I am sure you guys would have dealt with corporate social responsibility and sustainability, and you would be in a better position to tell what you are doing or what needs to be done in that field. I won't delve into that topic, but corporate social responsibility and sustainability also goes a long way in ensuring that the company operates well. It leads to uh, government confidence in your company, stakeholders confidence in your company, and that would definitely help in building your business. Moving on, I've already spoken about the various benefits that the good governance can grant. I've tried to list down a few. Uh, it will definitely give you better access to global markets, because these foreign institutional investors or investors coming in from foreign countries would definitely be interested in investing in a company where their investment is protected and where they get better returns. that can happen only if in case you have better governance practices in the organization. Then having a anti-bribery or a anti-corruption policy in the company can definitely lead to eradication of corruption in India. In fact, less corruption would mean that the consumers would have quality products, would have products at a low cost, and also ensure that it will mean that there is no exploitation of consumers at large. Then it would definitely increase your uh, enterprise valuation. You would have seen various companies which have good governance practices. The share prices go high every time they come out with better results. These are best governance practices. That is a foundation which would lead to definitely increase in your enterprise valuation. You can have assurance against corporate scandals and crises. So if in case you have process, you have checks, you have internal controls, frauds and scandals can't happen very frequently, or won't happen if in case you have strong internal controls in place. So good governance can give an assurance to that. There would be larger accountability to stakeholders, because you are not only generating profits, but you are contributing towards society. You are making this world a sustainable place to live in through your operations. Then there is reduced cost of borrowings. If you see, banks are interested in giving loans to companies which have better governance practices. The interest rate that the banks would be charging would be less to a good governed company compared to a bad governed company. You would be able to attract and retain talent. Employees would be happy to work in an organization which is known for good governance practices. There would be confidence from government and regulators. Of course, your brand value, reputation, and credibility would uh, increase if in case you have good governance practices. So these are some of the benefits that the good governance can lead, and these benefits would definitely enhance your business performance, and you would develop as an organization, but also contribute towards development of the country and the entire ecosystem. So moving on, these are some of the influences, motivators of corporate governance. First and foremost, management integrity. So integrity, as I mentioned, has to come from the top. Board's ability, board needs to be able, board needs to ask the right questions, board needs to ensure that there is a system and process in place, and the ability of the board will determine how the company performs in longer run. There has to be adequacy of board and company processes. Then there has to be a commitment from all levels of individuals in governance process. It cannot be that it will come from the top and the middle management or the lower management won't be taking care of governance. Governance should start from the top and it has to end at the bottom. Everybody in the organization should have the same level of commitment towards governance process so that it can be a success. Then quality of corporate reporting, transparency should be the hallmark, and the shareholders should participate in the governance process. So if in case any stakeholder is not happy with how the company is operating or have any complaints or want to raise any concern, there should be mechanism to raise that concern. You would have seen many companies coming out with vigil mechanism or whistleblower policy. This whistleblower policy is nothing but a process through which the stakeholders can raise their concern, and you should ensure that there is no victimization of a whistleblower who has raised a concern, or there is retaliation against that person. The concerns that they have raised should be investigated, and if there is any wrongdoing, that should be used to improve the functioning of the company. I mean, I think we have 3 more minutes for our time commitment. Any questions so far? I'm happy to take it. If not, then we can conclude by uh, detailing what should be the way forward when it comes to improving the governance practices for business performance. Any question from anyone?
Mr. Dheeraj, anyhow, we'll be taking some questions at the end of the session. So you can just complete your entire presentation, and we'll be having a few queries for you also, like
Sure. Thank you
questions.
so much, Rajesh. So as we conclude, it is very important to remember that implementing and maintaining strong corporate governance is an ongoing journey. Governance has no limits. The bar should always keep rising. It requires dedication, commitment, and a willingness to adapt to the evolving needs and expectations. And as I said, it demands a culture that values ethics, integrity, and responsible leadership. So what I would encourage each one of you is to take the knowledge and insights from this session and use it as a catalyst for the growth and advantage in your organization, and also foster a governance mindset that would be that can be spread across all levels of your organization. And what I would say is you continue exploring and staying updated on the emerging trends, best practices, and regulatory developments in the realm of corporate governance. Uh, Continuous learning would definitely help you seek more opportunities to enhance your governance frameworks. And also proactively, you would be able to address the challenges, mitigate risk, and uh, build your organization for long-term success. With that, I will end my presentation, and will be happy to take any questions that are there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you, Mr. Deeraj.
Yeah,
I am Raghavan from Chennai.
yeah. Go ahead, Raghavan sir.
My point is, you have explained the concepts excellently well, and the company needs to organize themselves in this fashion.
Yep.
But are there any regulators who, from outside, also take a care of whether the company is really doing the way they need to perform or not?
Okay, sir. So Companies Act, as I said, has been a game changer. So it is one of the legislation that uh, Ministry of Corporate Affairs would be one of the regulators that would be seeing the operations of the company. If you see with this new e-governance model that has come in, what will happen is these financial statements that you file with the Ministry of Corporate Affairs every year, there is artificial intelligence which will read through these financial statements, and if they feel that there is a gap, a notice will be issued. One simple example I can give is any company which has a paid up capital of more than 10 crores is required to appoint a company secretary, a chief financial officer, and a managing director. If your company has not done that, this will pick up. This artificial intelligence will pick up and say that you have not complied with, say, Section 203 of Companies Act. Show cause notice will be issued against the company, and the company will have to explain why it has not complied. If there is a sustainability reporting, BSSR reporting that needs to be done, top 100 companies has to do it mandatorily. If one of the company doesn't do it, the annual report would be picked up by the stock exchanges. Stock exchanges would be sending a notice asking why you have not done. If in case there is any section that you have not complied with in the BSSR reporting, or you have not reported, or you have not made proper disclosure, question can be asked why you have not done. Corporate social responsibility, for example, you have not paid or you have not contributed towards CSR, the 2% that is mandatorily required to be spent. They will ask you why you have not spent. They will company regulators have also started imposing penalty. I have seen many orders now coming wherein companies have been penalized for not spending towards CSR. The officers in default have been penalized in their personal capacity as well. So these regulators now they are becoming very smart. They are sending out notices. They are putting onus on these managing directors, this key managerial personals of the company. And if in case I am a KMP of the company, I need to ensure that the company is complying so that I my membership number or my reputation is not at stake along with my company. So these regulators have started coming in, and they are coming it very in a big manner. Competition Commission of India, for example, you would have seen various investigations that are happening, whether a cartel is there, whether companies involving themselves in anti-competitive practices. CBI, ED, they are checking whether you are indulging in any corruption practices or not. If in case you have paid money and got your things done, there can be action, criminal implications against the company or the officials involved in the company. So, I mean, from everywhere, regulators have started coming in. If you see the pollution control boards, they have started making requirements very stringent. They want proof of the compliances that the companies are doing. They want images of how operations are being done in the company to see if they are not in a position to inspect the company. They want to see the images and make out whether the company is complying or not. So it's manifold, and it's becoming very difficult, I would say, to and having a good governance would only be the lifesaver when it comes to
Why she
regulatory
has
compliance.
founded the insurance company? No, this thing. Yeah.
Any other question? Hope I was able to answer to your query, sir.
Yes, you did it.
Any other question?
So you covered the topic very well. Right
Thank
from
you so
the
much, sir.
basics to the compliance aspects. Very well.
Thank you
But
so much.
don't you think even sustainability is a big part of governance?
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. I mean, I was asked to talk on governance topic more.
Great.
I was under the impression that sustainability has already been taken care by BCIC and its team.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. In fact, Mr. Deeraj, in fact, very rightly covered all this corporate governance aspect. I must say, like, there have been, various instances because of that, all this started and all. However, in terms of sustainability also, in fact, there have been multiple area, in fact, where people are evaluating a company, like how much, a person or in fact the company is getting the score on a particular governance area,
Absolutely,
right? So
absolutely.
it's like not the govern, just the regulators and all, even the kind of rating agencies are also eyeing into your overall performance. And of course, somewhere it will reflect in the business performance also, because the investors will also see how well you're rating in the governance, in the ESG part, right? So, in fact, I also have a question to you, Mr. Dheeraj. Like, I know it's the time is already crossed. I was just for 2 minutes. So what do you think? Like, how about this overall? The kind of the reporting system, the BRSR, the business responsibility, responsibility and sustainability reporting. Now, how it is really helping any company to strengthen their overall governance aspect, and of course, contributing for the ESG performance enhancement. So maybe just for, I know it's a very macro level question, but would you please, tell in brief that how, I think this gonna bring the transparency along for our investors. So would you just slightly brief on that BRSR?
Correct. So that's a good question, Rajesh. In fact, see, if you see these disclosures that the government or the regulators is expecting from a company has like they have hundreds of questions in that disclosure. So in order to answer those disclosures and to ensure that you are giving a proper and fair view of the operations of your company, you need to do something. You need to ensure that whatever questions have been asked has been are getting complied in the company or not. So if in case there is a question, say for example, have you complied with so and so clause of the BRSR reporting? If you want to say yes, you need to have a process in place which would give you a confidence to say yes. If in case you say there is no yes and no answer, you have to either say yes and you have to say no. If in case you say no, uh, what is happening is that those stakeholders who are reading this report will say that, okay, this company is not very great when it comes to compliances under these aspects. So should we really invest in a company which is not taking care of these aspects? So overall, this disclosure and this reporting concept has ensured that many companies have started taking sustainability reporting very seriously. They have started developing expertise in the company who can take care of this function. Earlier, it was just a tick the box exercise. Anybody used to tick and just give it to the regulator. Now employees who have specialization in this field are being hired, they are being paid. Entire department is being set in various organizations. There are external consultant supports that are being taken to put in place a process and a policy in place to ensure compliances under each of the heads that are there in the BRSR report and ensure compliance under each of these aspects. If in case a company is not able to comply with something, I have seen many companies giving a detailed explanation as to why they have not been able to comply with that, so that the investors or the regulators who are looking into these reports gets a clear picture of what is happening in the company.
Yeah, thank you very much, Deeraj. So I think we also have two more questions. I don't know how to take it forward because already time is over. Maybe
Okay,
if
so
quickly,
you can note down that question, Rajesh.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
we
yes.
can
We'll-
get back to them.
Yeah, so we'll get back to you, Mr. Vijay and Mr. Kapil, in fact, for putting your questions. We'll see how well we can reply back to you from BCIC or from the speaker side itself. So thanks a lot, in fact, for the detailed presentation on the corporate governance and of course some of the best practices that we can adopt to improve our entire business performance for a sustainable manner, in fact. And I think we'll continue to do so. I think we all will be having certain areas of difficulties, gaps, and all that we need to work upon. And of course, we can, further enhance our ESG performance. Yeah. So well presented, articulated, in fact, Mr. Deeraj. So with that, now I hand over to Ms. Rupa, in fact, for the thanks. Yeah. Thank you for Thanksgiving. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Over to you, Rupa, madam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rajesh, and thank you very much, Mr. Deeraj Nair, for a wonderful presentation. We look forward to have many more further initiatives similar to this in the future, sir. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you
Thanks
so
all the
much.
Participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, BCIC, and all the participants who made this session possible. In fact, your commitment to fostering knowledge sharing and professional development has been commendable. I have seen many such presentations being organized by BCIC, which have been extremely helpful when it comes to development of professionals. As we depart from this session, let us carry forward the spirit of good governance, champion it as a catalyst in our organization, and contribute towards sustainable growth and enduring success. I wish you all the best in your journey towards enhancing business performance through good governance practices. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you once again.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.